Most people think they understand World War II winters. They think of Stalingrad, the Ardennes, maybe frostbite statistics and whitewashed photos of frozen ruins. What often gets missed is that winter was not just a background condition. It was an adversary that quietly reshaped tactics, survival knowledge, and even post-war doctrine. Entire systems of adaptation emerged under extreme cold, many of them improvised by ordinary soldiers, medics, engineers, and civilians. Some worked, some failed catastrophically. Many were quietly buried after the war because they reflected institutional mistakes, uncomfortable lessons, or unofficial ingenuity that didn't fit heroic narratives. If you value serious historical analysis and survival lessons grounded in reality, subscribe to The Survival Record. This channel exists to preserve the knowledge that war tried to erase. What follows are 8 winter survival adaptations from World War II that mattered deeply in their moment, influenced later thinking, and still carry lessons worth understanding today. The first lesson soldiers learned was that cold kills systems long before it kills men. Early in the war, several armies entered winter campaigns assuming equipment reliability would hold. It did not. Lubricants froze, metal contracted, optics fogged internally, and small mechanical tolerances failed under sustained cold. German forces in the Soviet Union learned this brutally in 1941, when weapon actions seized and vehicle transmissions cracked. Improvised fixes followed. Soldiers diluted lubricants with fuel, stripped weapons of non-essential parts, and learned to sleep with critical components inside their clothing to keep them warm. These adaptations were unofficial, often discouraged but effective. Post-war military doctrine would eventually formalize cold weather equipment testing, but the origin of that doctrine lies in these overlooked improvisations, not in pre-war planning. The second reality was that layered clothing mattered less than moisture control, something few armies understood at first. Early winter uniforms prioritized insulation without fully accounting for sweat accumulation during exertion. Soldiers marching or digging would soak inner layers, then freeze during rest. Soviet and Finnish forces learned faster than most that dryness mattered more than thickness. Finnish troops during the Winter War institutionalized these practices, emphasizing rhythm, move, vent, rest, dry. Many Western armies would not fully absorb this lesson until decades later. Modern cold-weather survival doctrine owes more to these Eastern Front adaptations than to any pre-war design philosophy. A third overlooked adaptation involved food, not calories, but texture and temperature. Cold-weather nutrition wasn't just about eating more. Frozen rations broke teeth, slowed digestion, and discouraged consumption altogether. Some units began deliberately warming food in small quantities throughout the day, rather than relying on scheduled meals. German mountain troops melted snow for soups thickened with fats, while Soviet soldiers added hot water to nearly everything edible. The goal was not comfort, but compliance, keeping soldiers eating regularly under stress. These habits influenced later military ration design, including self-heating components and high-fat cold-weather meals. The lesson was simple: survival depends on eating when the body resists it. The fourth adaptation emerged from an uncomfortable truth. Frostbite was often caused by command decisions, not weather. Post-war narratives tend to frame frostbite as unavoidable. Wartime medical reports tell a different story. Forced marches without rest, refusal to allow glove removal for weapon handling, and discipline systems that punished warming breaks all contributed directly to cold injuries. Soviet medical officers quietly documented this and began advocating for rotational exposure limits and mandatory warming intervals. These ideas conflicted with prevailing views of discipline and endurance and were often ignored at higher levels. After the war, however, militaries incorporated exposure management into training doctrine, though rarely acknowledging its origins in wartime failure. The fifth winter hack was the strategic use of snow itself as insulation rather than an obstacle. Snow shelters, trenches roofed with snow, snow-packed foxholes and improvised igloo-like structures proved warmer than tents or bare earth. Air trapped in snow provided insulation superior to many issued materials. Post-war survival manuals often sanitize these techniques, presenting them as outdoor skills rather than battlefield necessities born from supply collapse. Yet their origin lies squarely in soldiers learning to survive when logistics failed. The sixth lesson came from an unexpected source. Civilian survival knowledge quietly transferred into military use. Peasants, hunters, and indigenous populations living in cold regions possessed generational knowledge about movement, shelter, and heat management. After the war, many armies invested in specialized cold weather units, institutionalizing what had once been dismissed as unsophisticated local knowledge. The seventh adaptation involved psychological survival, an aspect rarely acknowledged in official histories. Extended winter darkness, isolation, and cold produced cognitive fatigue long before physical collapse. Soldiers developed rituals, routine equipment checks, repetitive tasks, strict schedules, not just for efficiency, but for mental stability. Medical officers observed that units maintaining predictable daily structures experienced fewer breakdowns and accidents. This understanding influenced later military psychology, particularly in polar and submarine operations. The winter battlefield revealed that mental survival under environmental stress was as critical as physical endurance. The eighth and final lesson was that winter warfare punished arrogance more consistently than enemy action. Those who adapted, allowing flexibility, decentralizing decisions and trusting local judgment, preserved combat effectiveness. These lessons were often politically inconvenient after the war. It was easier to blame weather than flawed doctrine. Yet modern military planning increasingly treats environment as an active adversary, a shift rooted in these suppressed wartime experiences. World War II winters were not merely seasonal hardships. They were crucibles that forced adaptation, exposed institutional blind spots, and quietly reshaped survival knowledge. Many of the techniques developed under those conditions never made it into official histories because they challenged heroic narratives or revealed uncomfortable truths about leadership and preparedness. Remembering them matters because they show how survival often depends less on strength than on humility, observation, and adaptation under pressure. If you value this kind of in-depth historical analysis, where overlooked details carry lasting lessons, subscribe to the Survival Record. And if this episode added something meaningful to your understanding of history and survival, share it with others who believe the past still has something important to teach.